Thank you so much for the introduction. Am I audible to everyone? Yeah. Good morning, and thanks for gathering here in an effort to listen to me. I'm not really going to take up the full complement of 30 minutes and bore you to death. So let me just again, give you a brief introduction of myself. So I'm Aatash, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Edvancer Adventures, where we train thousands of people in data science and analytics. And we also work very closely with lots of companies in helping them both to recruit and also to train their people in data science. And over the last 3 years of being with Edvancer, what we have noticed is that companies really struggle in terms of understanding who to hire, what kind of people to hire in their data science teams, how exactly to create their teams. And through this struggle, witnessing this struggle, we came up with this analogy of Superman versus Avengers, how exactly to create a winning data science team. So, before I really begin, how many of you, I'm sure all of you are aware of who Superman is, but how many of you are aware of who the Avengers are, or not aware of who the Avengers are? Anyone who doesn't know the Avengers? Okay, that's good. So we have a knowledgeable people here. So what exactly makes Superman so powerful? What does he have in terms of his superpowers? So he has all kinds of things built within himself, right? So he has superhuman strength, he has X-ray vision, infrared vision, heat vision, telescopic vision, superhuman hearing. He can throw out icy gusts of wind. He stores and works on solar energy. And apart from that, he's quite fast, he has superhuman speed. So he's basically a one-man army, the man of steel. But who exactly are the Avengers, right? Now, the unique thing here is that the Avengers don't really have multiple superpowers like a Superman. Each one of these people in the Avengers team, they are probably good at one or max two things that they do really well. And some of them are not really even superhumans. They are just ordinary humans like Tony Stark, who's Iron Man, who derives his power from his equipment and his suit. But when you combine these guys together, when you combine their forces and powers together, they can actually defeat the fiercest evils in the world. And that is where their strength or their superpower lies. The ability to combine their forces, the ability to combine their superpowers into a winning team versus Superman, who has to do it all alone. So now you might be thinking, what does this really have to do with data science? So a few months ago, we got a call from a company which we work with, and they told us that they wanted to hire data scientists. Great. Now, during this conversation, it transpired that they had been looking to hire a data scientist for the last, almost 4 to 5 months, but hadn't really reached anywhere in terms of the hiring process. They were really struggling. So we told them, why don't you send us the requirements that you need, right? And this is what they sent us. So I'm not sure if this is very, very legible to you at the moment, but what they were looking for is a PhD in statistics and economics. And apart from that, they were also looking for obviously proficiency in the statistical tools like SAS, R, Python, etc. Fine, that's perfectly fine till then. But after that, they also wanted this guy to be great in Java. They wanted him to be good at Unix and Hadoop and Spark, Mahout, basically the entire Hadoop technology stack. Apart from that, they preferred that he should also be aware or knowledgeable about visualization tools like Tableau or D3JS. It doesn't end there. They wanted him to be good at statistical inference and also machine learning techniques, good at social media analytics, good at social network analytics, text mining, web analytics, with an exposure to the healthcare domain and with experience of 5 years. So basically, what they were looking for in one sentence is a data scientist Superman. This is what our data scientist Superman looks like. I've just replaced the original Superman superpowers with the superpowers that a data scientist has in terms of what this company was looking for. Faster than Spark, more powerful than a deep learning algorithm, able to leave complex business problems in a bound. Who is he? He's the data scientist Superman. So what does a data scientist Superman really have? He's a PhD, he knows SQL, R, Python, SAS, he knows Java, the Hadoop ecosystem. He can also manage projects, he has domain expertise, he's an expert on statistics and machine learning, visualization, etc., etc. Now, is this, is this really something that works for all kinds of companies? Would it be, really better to hire a Superman or work with an entire team like the Avengers? Right? You can have one person who's a machine learning ninja, one person who's a data engineer, a big data engineer who can manage your data pipelines, set up your data infrastructure. You have a domain expert, a project manager, etc. Is it really wrong for a company to look for a data scientist Superman versus forming a team like the Avengers? Who's in favor of the Superman hiring model? Anyone here who thinks that, the Superman hiring model is the way to go? Who's in favor of the Avengers hiring model? Anyone who's in favor of Avengers? Avengers. Yeah. Okay. So all of you are in favor of the Avengers hiring model. But it's, no problem. Coming to that. So this is not, an occurrence which is infrequent. We get lots of such requests from lots of companies. But it's not so simple that, the Avengers hiring model is the best way to go. It's not an open and shut case. There are various factors which can decide who to hire, when to hire, how to hire, etc. So first, let's, look at the pros and cons of each of these models before we really go forward. So why you should hire a Superman? What are the benefits of hiring a Superman? As I said earlier, he's a one-man army. You don't really need to, recruit anyone else to work on your data science project. He can, start by building up your data engineering pipelines. He can do your ETL bit. He can go and clean data using Python and Spark. He can create your analytics architecture, figure out what kind of models to build, understand the business problem, create your entire data product if you want and deploy it in business. Right? He can do everything that you want. Now, obviously, because he's the guy who's managing the entire project, there's no worry about him working in silos or the silo mentality creeping in. What's the silo mentality? It's the hesitance or the inability to share information across departments, across team members. So he's not really working in a silo. And if he's not working in a silo, obviously there's no need for a coordination or a project manager, for you to hire a project manager also to coordinate the entire project, to coordinate the entire team. And apart from that, because there is no project team involved, you don't really need a team building activities or team building process to get your data science team to work together. And it's possibly cheaper to hire a Superman in the longer run. I mean, he's of course a much more expensive hire than people, than the Avengers model. But you are hiring one person versus hiring 6 people, lower overhead, so on and so forth. So there are obviously benefits, lots of benefits to following the Superman hiring model, provided you can actually find one, and after you find one, you can retain him. Right? The problems with and why you shouldn't be hiring a Superman is that, one, he takes too much time to find and hire. How many people here are, Superman data scientists? How many people? Okay, that's one person. May I know your name, sir? Samir, get ready to be mobbed outside by all these guys looking to hire. So there's one guy here seated here amongst about 30, 40 people. So imagine how tough it's going to be when all kinds of companies are looking to hire a Superman. Right? It's going to be very, very tough for you to hire a person like that unless you have something, really special. Fine, you've managed to hire him, that's great, congratulations. But how do you manage to retain that guy? Now, as you would know, Superman constantly gets called upon everywhere around the world. A crisis after another, one crisis after another. He's constantly running around trying to solve them. Similarly, there are lots of companies there waiting to poach your Superman data scientist. So unless you have something very special to offer, he may not really last long with you. It's really going to be tough for you to retain him. Why would he work for you versus maybe work for a Facebook or a Google or an Uber, right? So it's really going to be tough to retain him. And after that, let's say you hired him, he leaves after a certain while. Where are you back to? You're back to square one. You are back to looking for another few months, spending lots of money to hire another Superman data scientist and getting him up to speed on your projects. So these are two major issues with hiring or following the Superman hiring model. Kryptonite, I mean, obviously Superman is not without his weakness. He's a superhero, but he has a weakness. The radioactive mineral kryptonite, exposure to that could kill him. Similarly, each of your data scientists, good Superman data scientists could probably have a weakness. And that weakness could be really anything. It's up to you to really find that out and make sure that he's not exposed to it. Some of them may have problems with scaling up, speed, etc. Obviously, this model does not scale very easily because it's really tough to hire this person, really tough to retain him. And even though he's Superman, how many crises can he solve at the same time? How many projects can he work for you at the same time? 1, 2, max 3. Let's say you have lots of projects to work on. It's not really easy to keep hiring Superman after Superman trying to work on each of those projects. So it's not a model which really scales very, very easily. Obviously, you have to trust his work because there's no one else probably, unless you have a guy who's as good as him, there's no one else to check on his work. Maybe he made a mistake somewhere, you don't know, but you'll just have to trust his work. And after all, I mean, no guy can really be an expert on everything under the sun. He could be a jack of all trades. He may know a little bit of big data engineering. He may know a lot about statistics, but again, a very little bit about visualization. So if you have complex business problems, he's not really he can provide you the breadth, but he's not going to be able to provide you the depth that you need. So these are the problems associated, with hiring or following the Superman hiring model. So there are pros, and obviously there are cons. So why should you, follow the Avengers hiring model? What makes it most of you said that, the Avengers hiring model is probably better. Why should you follow that? Obviously, it's easier to hire, a person with one specific skill rather than all the skill sets that are available with a Superman. It's easier to hire maybe a big data engineer. It's easier to hire a statistician separately. It's easier to hire a visualization guy separately. So it becomes, much faster for you in terms of your hiring process. Now, if it's easier to hire, that's because there are far more people available than, a person with all the skills. So it becomes easier to retain him also. He's not really a prima donna. He's not a Madonna who's going to, throw a fit and walk off at a moment's notice. This person, let's say you hired a big data engineer or you hired a statistician. There are many like that, and there are many companies also looking for them, but at the same time, because of the volume of such people available, not everybody gets easy opportunities as your data scientist Superman. So they are easier to retain. Again, if they leave, fine. They are still easier to replace than your data scientist Superman. You're not going to spend 6 months looking for one. You can spend you'll probably spend a month or so, and you'll get your next hire. And obviously, it's easier to get him up to speed on your project, which the earlier guy left halfway. Apart from that, it's a scalable model. Because they are easier to hire, they are easier to retain and replace, it becomes a far more scalable model. You'll have 4 or 5 different people working on the same project as the one Superman that you probably would have hired otherwise. So, and I don't know, I think most of you guys might have seen the Avengers movie. There were 6 Avengers over there. But if you actually go back to, and I don't know how many of you are comic book fans, but if you go back to the comic books, there were multiple Avengers, many more than the 6 that they showed in the movie. So that way you can have multiple Avenger teams, which makes it much more scalable to work on multiple projects at the same time. And obviously they are not jack of all trades. They are experts and masters in their own field. They provide you the depth that you require rather than, and the breadth obviously comes from the multiple number of people you are hiring. And apart from that, of course, they can provide you the faster turnaround times, because if you put them to work on one project, they can easily and quickly work on it. It's 6 people working on it rather than just one guy with his limited time. So these are the benefits of hiring and or following the Avengers hiring model. What could be the cons of this model? Sorry? Silos, that's right. Not sure again if this has come out very well, but let's go back to the old tale of the 6 blind men and the elephant, right? One blind man holds the tail of the elephant and says it's a rope. One guy touches the ear and says it's a fan. The other guy holds the trunk and says it's a pipe. Similarly, your Avengers could probably be working in silos or focusing only on their bit of the project and trying to solve it from their perspective. So they are not really working as a team. So this is where the silo mentality really comes in, right? Which could really impact your Avengers hiring model. It requires coordination. It requires a project manager to coordinate the entire team, to get them to work on one single goal at one point of time. And obviously there are too many moving parts, there are too many people to take care of, there are too many people to get updated on your projects. How do you exactly manage to coordinate all of them? And finally, is the whole greater than the sum of the parts, or is the sum of the parts greater than the whole? Right? That's only something that you will realize once you actually hire them and are able to figure out whether they can coordinate together and work. So how do you actually create your team, right? There are pros and cons to both models. How do you figure out whom to hire, when to hire, how to hire? So we created a sort of, pseudo framework where we have several questions which a company needs to answer before beginning their hiring process. Sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, before we go there, I think the Avengers are going back to bring everybody together and working around the same. Right, so the silo mentality and all the problems go around. If you have somebody like a Nick Fury who is coordinating and making sure they are all working towards the same goal.
Right. But even in the Avengers, I mean, if you remember the movie, they were earlier, some of them were at loggerheads with each other.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then finally they had to get a common goal. So I'll come to that point shortly.
Yeah,
right.
Use behavioral assistance.
Right. So here's a kind of question-based pseudo framework that we created, which a company really needs to answer before figuring out what exactly or whom they should be hiring or what kind of model to follow. So the first and foremost thing that a company really needs to do is define certain aspects of their hiring process. And the first and foremost question that they need to define, or the answer they need to define, is why are you actually creating a data science team, right? Why are you creating a data science team? And there are several sub-questions to that which will help you answer that. What problems are you actually looking to solve? Right? That's the first thing that you need to answer when you think about hiring data scientists. Are your problems complex ones? Are they simple ones? Are you just looking to, figuring out maybe some kind of inference around what's happening with your business? Or are you actually looking to create entire data products? All that is something that you need to define before you hire a person. This will help you understand whom to hire. And obviously, what goals do you plan to achieve by solving those problems? This is another important thing. I mean, fine, you understand what your problems are, but what goals do you plan to achieve by solving those problems? I mean, if you are looking to, understand your customer retention strategy, what is your goal of understanding that strategy or creating a customer retention strategy? It's obviously to increase your revenues, lower your marketing costs, etc. So that is something that you need to understand too, and so that you figure out what kind of person to hire. And also, what kind of data do you have? Do you really have big, huge unstructured data? Or is it just general structured data that you have, which is not really huge in size? If it's not, then you don't need a big data engineer. You don't need a huge data scientist Superman who has the big data skills with him. So these are things that you need to define first, apart from understanding what are the resources you have for creating this team. And these resources are not just the amount of salary that you are willing to pay him, but also what are the resources you yourself are willing to invest in hiring a person. The resources not just in terms of the cost, but also in terms of the time that you have, the time that your team needs to spend on this hiring process. Apart from this, you need to understand your organization's culture. Right? It's how do they exactly, how will your team fit in, how will your Superman fit into your organization's culture, or whether they'll be actually a misfit. So does your company already have a data-driven culture? Fine, they may not be into data science, but do you actually, does your company actually take decisions based on data, maybe just plain and simple BI? Or is your decision-making model just traditional management-driven where, decisions are taken based on experience or intuition or gut feel? So how involved is the management in using data for decisions? How skilled are your people in analyzing data? Right? Do you already have people in your team whom you can actually upskill into data scientists, or at least the Avengers, with each person having one particular skill? Have they actually worked in terms of analyzing data before? Do you have BI guys? Maybe fine, they're just working on Excel creating MIS, but can you actually upskill them into figuring out more detailed insights through actual predictive analytics? And how is your organization structured in terms of teams or departments? Do you have a centralized structure, a decentralized structure, a hybrid kind of structure? How exactly are you going to make your data science team work in this kind of a scenario? So these are some of the questions that one needs to answer before figuring out whom to hire. And once you answer these questions, you will yourself realize what model to follow. So which one do I choose? Where is the Superman hiring model a good fit? Where is the Avengers hiring model a good fit? So for the Superman hiring model, if it would be a good fit, if you are a smaller organization which cannot really hire an entire team of people at one go. At the same time, maybe your goals of solving your business problems or analyzing your data is not very clear, and you actually need this person to also help you define those goals. Again, because the Superman hiring model is not very scalable, you should not have too many problems for him to solve. Right? You should have few problems, but these problems need to be very, very interesting. And do you have the time and patience to look for this person and to retain him? Do you have something special to offer to retain him? If all these are something that you can strike through, then definitely the Superman hiring model is a good fit for you. Where are the Avengers a good fit? Now the Avengers are people who are more of specialized in just one skill. So if you have more of a data-driven organization where they can come in, get plugged in, and start working, then definitely this is a good fit for a hiring model for you. Your goals are defined clearly, or you have someone already in place, like as you said, a Nick Fury, who can clearly define those goals for them. Then it's a good fit for you. Obviously, if you are hiring the Avengers, you are hiring many people, then you need them to work on lots of problems also to keep them productive and occupied. So you should have lots of problems to solve. And if you, again, have lack of time to hire people, then this is the model to follow. And large amount of complex data should also be available. Otherwise, you might want to cut down on your team size as such. So these are two, clearly defined areas where your hiring models could fit in.
So as per me, it also depends on the which, for which hierarchy you are hiring a people. You are hiring for a lead or a team player. Right. So it also depends which type of model you have to select.
Right. So let's say even if you are hiring for a lead, the lead need not be a Superman himself, right? A lead needs to have good man management skills, good project management skills. Again, in the Avengers model, the director, Nick Fury, he's the lead, right? He doesn't really have any superpowers of his own, but he knows how to handle these guys who have those different superpowers with themselves.
But for direction also, we need a person who has the skills.
Right.
If a person has, say, I have good working experience in R, but I don't know Python, my lead has to be a Superman. So if I have a condition that I have to work in Python, so he should guide me. So I think a lead should be a person who come from a superpower model.
Could be. So that's where the hybrid model comes in, which again I'll come to shortly. So moving on. So how do you actually hire a Superman? A Superman works for a cause. He doesn't work for a company. Right? He needs to have, to understand that he's working on something really big, something really impactful here. And only then he's going to work for you. Otherwise, he's going to move out and look for something which really intellectually stimulates him. You need to create a job description first. Obviously, everyone creates a job description while hiring. But what should your job description actually focus on? So first and foremost, avoid making tools the focus of your job description. You do not need to put out a laundry list of technologies which this guy really needs to know. Focus on the work and goals that he needs to do. Your job description is your marketing activity to hire this person. So focus on the work and the goals that he will achieve while working in your company. Showcase the impact that he can make, right? That's where he works for a cause, not a company part comes in, right? What is the kind of impact that he will make for your company? What is the kind of impact that he will make on your business? That's what he really loves to understand. So first you need to create a job description which doesn't really, focus on tools like every other job description in place. The interview process also needs to focus more on the roles and the goals that he has to achieve. And that's again an inspiration that you need to provide to him. And apart from that, between the offer and joining, you need to keep them engaged because as I said, there are thousands of other companies looking for him. So he's going to move out if you don't keep him engaged. So you need to keep, him engaged by getting him to start understanding your business, start understanding the teams that he's going to work with, etc. And you need to always be in hiring mode because you don't know when he's going to leave you. So you need to constantly, keep looking for people, be aware of where they are, who they are, so that you don't spend too much time looking for him again. And how do you retain a Superman? He will only fight the worst evil, right? He's only going to be working on your big, huge problems which have the maximum impact. He's not really going to focus on your small day-to-day problems. And you don't need to hire a Superman to focus on your small day-to-day problems. He needs to be the superhero. He needs that, ego boost within the company. He needs to be known as the guy who, helped your company benefit or created this impact within your company. You obviously need to provide him flexibility in terms of working hours, in terms of working profile, locations, etc. His solution has to save the world. So his solution needs to be implemented. If he is going to be working on your business problems and he's going to present his findings to the management, and if the management says, that's great, that's wonderful, but we don't have the time and resources to implement these things, that's really going to upset him. So his solution has to be implemented. You need to constantly add to his arsenal, give him training opportunities, etc. And obviously money is a factor which everyone looks at. So who can form the Avengers? What kind of people do you need to recruit to match this Superman? What kind of roles do you need to have? So there are various kinds of roles. You'll have your statistics machine learning expert, you'll have your data engineer. Now, depending on the data you have, he can be the big data engineer or just your ordinary database guy. He can be, you'll need to hire the director, who's Nick Fury, who will manage all these guys, the lead guy, and he can be the Superman, as you said. You'll need to have the product manager who will coordinate with the entire team, the data product engineer who will take your algorithms and code and turn them into production code and your actual product, the visualization guys, the domain experts, and the data quality analysts. So how do we get them to work together, right? That's the important part about hiring the or following the Avengers model. So they need to have a unified goal, you need to converge their individual goals into a common goal. So your data engineer, if he thinks that his only goal is to, create and maintain and administer your data pipelines and your data infrastructure, that's his individual goal. But how does it fit into the overall, project goal or the common goal for your business? That's what you need to define, and that's where, the team leader or the team lead or the project manager comes in. They need to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, if they are working as a team, they need to understand where, who is strong in what, who is weak in what, and they need to back up each other. That's what makes a successful, team. They need to learn from each other. They need to have this unified vision, and obviously, one needs to build trust amongst themselves. If you don't build trust amongst themselves, then the model is really going to fail. So how do you turn these Avengers into Supermen? Because eventually everyone loves a Superman, everyone wants to have a Superman. So is there a way you can turn these Avengers into Supermen? These are all separate guys, And the answer is to get them to work together, get them to work on each other's skills also, train them on that. So you move them closer to each other, get them to do some, train them on some common aspects where they can be good at. So the statistics guy can be trained on, let's say, visualization, or he can be trained on project management. Your big data engineer can be also trained in developing your data products. And you keep moving them closer till they turn into more of Supermen. Now, they may not exactly match a Superman, but you can get them as close as possible. And finally, how do you actually set up this team? Do you have it in a centralized feature where your data science function is a central team which works together with all kinds of departments and all kinds of teams? Or do you have them as a decentralized team where each department has its own data science people, right? Your marketing team will have a data science team, your supply chain department will have a data science team, etc. Or you can follow a hybrid model where you have a centralized team, but each of these multiple departments has their own data scientists working there in order to, coordinate and guide on specific domain requirements. So all these things actually also depend on the organization's culture and the way that you work right now. So if you have more of a centralized, functions which are fairly centralized, you can have a centralized data science team. Otherwise, you can have a hybrid model. So this is my last slide, and thanks for listening to me, being patient enough. Any questions?
I have a question.
And then you have the mic.
If we have to club some of these different characteristics that we talked, so we can say that there's programming skills, there's stat and machine learning skills, and we have domain expertise. So a data scientist probably by definition could be someone who has all three skills. A Superman is a data scientist, no doubt, but
right.
Every data scientist doesn't need to be a Superman, right? So a person can be 10 out of 10 in one of them, so that he can be part of Avengers, but can be knowledgeable about the others, so maybe 6
right.
or 7 out of 10.
Right.
Is it tough to hire a person like that?
So again, let's say it depends on the kind of skills you are looking for. If you are looking for a PhD in statistics and you expect him to be really good at Java and Hadoop, that's probably going to be a very tough ask. But if you are looking for a PhD in stats who's good at R, SAS, Python, machine learning, etc., maybe not that tough given the fact that so many people learn and get trained these days. But that, well, according to this definition of Superman, he's not a Superman. He may be a data scientist in today's nomenclature, but he's not your Superman data scientist, which every company would like to have and hire.
I have one question. So based on your, you basically help companies hire these special skills, right? So based on your experiences, how much of companies do actually need maybe the data science skills, or what's the proportion like? Like sometimes maybe the company doesn't even need a data scientist. They just
right. They just need a data analyst.
Right. So
a guy who can actually just analyze your data, which may be lying around in an Excel sheet. Right? You don't need a data scientist for that. So that is where as I went through the framework, and let me bring that back up again. what kind of data do you have and what kind of problems are you looking to solve. That's important. That's what you need to define before figuring out whether you need an ordinary data analyst, a Superman data scientist, or a team of people who can act as a Superman. So I'm sorry, we are out of time, so we'll just take it offline in case any of you have